Merry Christmas, my outstanding friends, and I have a Christmas present for you. I hope you'll take it as a Christmas present. Some of you might be here right now because of the video I did about the hair follicle, saying it could be a good conversation starter. Well, if you took the size of this hair follicle and the size of the creature, let's say it was a human, that human would be able to take a Tyrannosaurus Rex with one hand and crush it like that. All right, that's how big this creature would be. So dinosaurs are meaningless in the Mudfossil world. They are literally were the parasites of the creatures. And if you think I'm kidding you, I'm going to show you a parasite right now that is in the Czech Republic, and I think it could be very similar to a gigantic flea. Are you ready for this? Hold on to your hats. Okay, this is going to freak you out. It did me. I got to tell you right now, freaked me right out. This is a flea. And somebody sent me a picture of, I believe it's a Mudfossil flea, and it's kind of big. And it's in the Czech Republic, and it's covered with moss, and moss loves anything that has biology still left in it. So this thing is still highly biological. Now remember this look. Check this out. This is a girl's legs. She's about maybe 10 years old or so. And this is the flea, or whatever it is. So it looks very similar. You see the legs here, the little crunched up legs, just folding themselves up there, and all those little tickly things coming down. Now there might have been longer ones here and they're broken off, I don't know. And there's his eyes right there. And you can see the little pits and where the pupil parts would be. All of this green moss grows wherever there's biological remains. They love blood and biological tissue. Now, this thing here still has a ton of biology left in it. That's what they're growing on. Now, don't forget, that's pretty good size. Now, this was the flea here. And here's another shot of the flea here. Now you see how it has these little leggy looking things, and it's got all the little fuzzy stuff in the eyeballs and so forth. Now the body would be back up here, and it would be, fleas are flush with blood. I mean, that's what they live on, other people's blood. So that's why I think it's probably the body is up in here somewhere, and the blood is sort of forcing its way into the head. That's all I can think, because there's a lot of biology going on there, a lot of biology. All right, it doesn't look like it's running down into the head, but again, these creatures were just nothing more little bags of blood. That's what they lived on, was blood. It's just like a heart being here. It would have the same thing. It was just like a little bag of blood. And that's what they like, is blood. Anything biological. And body fluid, bloody body fluids are the best. They love red blood. You see this? This is the Library of Congress. They had a special meeting about sea serpents, and did they have any meeting and so forth. The Library of Congress. And they showed all of these sea serpents from all over the world, and they were saying, wow, why would all these people have these same stories? What is going on? What could it possibly mean? Dragons and giants and sea serpents. And they talked about it, but that's about as far as it got. And I would have loved to be part of the conversation, but anyway, this in Library of Congress is talking about this. So I'm going to tell you what they were in 1 second. Okay, you can see there's all kinds of monsters and, you know, sea serpents and things off the coast. I believe this is Africa. This is, I believe, Icelandia. So Iceland, and everybody had these maps. You know, perversely, they were everywhere. Let me back this out a little bit. You see, look at these monsters. You know, the crazy things. So it's hard for me to believe that they weren't real. Now, where would they come from? And why were they here? And, you know, why were they eating the ships and so forth? Well, these are the mythical creatures on old maps. Well, let's think about what would happen after the Great Flood. Okay, you should know about Typhon in the desert attacking the giant fish. And I'm sure you have Google Earth, so I don't see it's a big deal for you to come up and take your time and look around. That's a gigantic fish. Now this, I don't know what that is, but I believe this is his eye, and this is, of course, the fin up here. And the tail comes back around here, and the belly is here. And these are the scales. Now he was being attacked by this gigantic dragon. All right? Now this dragon is Typhon. And here's his head right here. All right? He's on all the ancient maps, and he's also on Apollodorus. Read Apollodorus 1.6.3. This is him. This is his red flaring eye they talk about. This is his hairy, unkept head that flopped around in the wind and so forth. And here's his dragon scaled throat. All right, follow it down. And this is the fluty looking flashy stuff they have on the parades. They have the dragons in China and so forth. Now, it comes down. This is his throat, all the way down. And his throat was cut right here. And there's the black and the red running out in the desert from his throat being cut. Now, this, as you can see, is the dragon scales. All right, you see it? And this was his throat. It's collapsed now. But that was his throat. And these scales run all the way, of course, on the edge of his throat. This is all runoff, just a bloody runoff. Now, think of the size of this creature. And again, this is his throat coming up. This same dragon scales up here as back there. And they have these little pleats in between them so that they can bend his neck. And he's still quite well protected. Although Zeus, with his great and mighty sword, cut his throat. Exactly what it says in Apollodorus. Now, here's his head. Now, remember, we're talking about Iceland and so forth. Well, that's way over here. But there was giant creatures everywhere on this earth. And I mean giant, just as this is. This is over 1,100 miles long. 1,100 miles long. Think of the parasites that would have been living in its digestive system and all over its body. Parasites. Where would they go? They would go into the ocean, off of his body, drain right into the ocean. Right off the fluids of his body would drain into the ocean, and then they'd have to find a way to make a living. Normally they'd be eating whatever he'd be eating, I guess. And they're parasites, you know, and some of them were gigantic fleas, it appears. I don't know if I showed you the gigantic flea yet, but you're going to see it one way or the other. And that's exactly what they claim in Apollodorus was Typhon. And he was spitting out all this nasty stuff at this fish. All right, and here's his beards right here. And the beard is the source of the toxin. It comes up this yellow stripe up his body. See that yellow stripe coming all the way up, and it dumps down into here, and it discharges out of his beard. You see it? It comes right down here, and all of that stuff comes flowing out of his beard. And it meets up with something else that's coming out of his nose. I'm not kidding you. And they say they snorted fire and smoke out of their noses, and this is the stuff that came out of the beard. Now that's serious looking stuff. Let me back off here so you can see it. Now, that met up with stuff over here, this stuff, to make the toxin. And that stuff came right out of his nose. Right out of here. You see it comes down, it comes right all the way down, all the way down. This is it right here. This must have been something that's right out of his nose. And it comes down, and it meets up. We see it, and meets up right here with the venom coming out of his beard. And then the whole mess comes down here. And look at this, nasty, nasty, nasty. Look at that nasty stuff. It comes down to attack the fish. And it did. It's coming down, coming down, coming down. Coming down, coming down. Look at that. How nasty can it get? There is no more nasty than that. And bam, right on the fish's fin. All right, so here it hits the fish's fin. And eats down here, all the way down into his vital flesh. And not only that, you can see inside of his flesh because they ate the surface off. Look at this. You're down into the blood vessels. It's going to take a second to home in. But we're down into where, these are arteries, the big ones. These are blood vessels, the smaller ones. Then you get into your capillaries, the little tiny ones, and then you're in your lymph system and your veins. You see it? That's how the blood flows through your body and services everything in your body. And that's the blood system, like you just skimmed off the surface, and you can look at all of the little blood vessels. Look, check this out. Let me find a good spot. You see this? This down here is the capillaries. And at the very end, after all the red stuff is used up, they squirt the black stuff into the lymph ducts or into the veins. And then it goes back up to get recharged. But the red stuff is the good stuff. And you see how this thing's growing in here? Red blood makes things grow. Even in the desert right here, it's growing. You don't see anything growing anywhere else. Not a single thing. Only in the red blood. And that's what this was red blood. So this was where these giant parasites and things came from. Everything has parasites and fungus and who knows what, and fleas and ticks and who knows what. And he was all hairy and unkempt and, nasty, they said, basically. And this is where all that stuff would have gone into the ocean. Now, they've got to make a living. So what are they going to do? Well, ships are a good thing to attack. So whenever this happened, I don't know. Whenever they were attacking these ships were probably when they started to do a lot of naval stuff. And at that point, these things were probably getting pretty hungry. And they just went after whatever they could get. And ships, anything big was probably what they were going to go after, because these are big things. These were huge creatures. And it's just like giants and dragons and an afterlife and gods. Not one single culture on the face of this planet, it did not have those things. Every one of them had giants, dragons, gods, and some kind of an afterlife or whatever, something like that. And the only time we've been denied that is since we went through the age of enlightenment. And now academia says, don't talk about that stuff because it's got to be nonsense. I say, what we are being taught now is just absolutely ridiculous. And we're missing everything and endangering our eternity. This stuff was real. This was all written about. And they call it myth, but it's not myth. This is trueness. And if you want to just ignore it and go about your life being happy, perfectly happy, deluded, that's what I call it, being a PhD. Which is what's happened. Perfectly happy, deluded. They're getting paid good. They're getting funded. They're doing everything fine. They got a bunch of people looking up to them. They tell people what to do, and they do it, or they destroy their lives. So that's what we are up against. What I have just shown you is undeniable. And that's probably one of the parasites that was one of these big creatures. This stuff is right on the surface of the earth. This hasn't happened that long ago. All my stuff is too. And I have, this giant hair follicle here, the creature would have been, I figure a minimum 200 times bigger than us. So if it's a 5 foot tall person now, 200 times, that's 1,000 feet tall. That's a pretty good sized guy. I don't think this would be a little too big to be clinging on to them, but 1,000 feet tall, you know. And Enoch said they were 2.5 miles tall. These could have been just living on people or little animals that were that big too. Everything had to be big. I can't see any other way, but it's just got my mind so boggled. And I know it does you too, because nobody can come out of this unscathed. Your mind is going to be splattered to some degree. And if you say, no, this is just normal, everything's fine. No, you got something wrong with your mind. This is not what you expect. Not by any means. And and that's why it's so denied and pushed back against by academia. It destroys basically everything they're saying. And the light research that we did too, that destroys everything in physics. And the scrubbing around the space, the same thing. They just don't understand what they're doing. And they don't want to understand it because they'll lose their jobs if they stand up. That's the key. This is what bothers me. Like I said, look up Mary Schweitzer and Mark Armitage. They got basically destroyed in that time frame there for stepping forward and saying, look what I found. No. And the same thing happened to me, same thing happened to Valkowski, same thing is going to happen to anybody that goes against what the authorities are. And they are authorities, basically. They are the authorities. You can't go against them without jeopardizing your future and, you know, your reputation, everything else. See, what happened to me was, it wasn't nice. And it wasn't nice at all what they did to Valkowski. He died in shame as being a pseudo-wacko. And I wrote a book about him to bring him back. And nobody knew about him. I'd say to people, you know who Valkowski was? No. Nope. And then every night I go, oh, that nutcase guy, the nutcase guy, basically that was it. It was either one or the other. Didn't have any idea about him, or he was insane. And so I wrote a book about him, and now he's come back to light. And I was just looking up some of his books. Now they're going like for $500. He's going to be a hero. You know, he is a hero, and he's going to be seen as a hero. And all this stuff is going to be seen as true and realistic. Mudfossils is going to be fully vetted as, well, it already has been. But they suppress it. You know, at Yale, they're not talking about this. They're saying, oh, they were all soft-bodied creatures, and it was before any of the fossils anybody ever knew about. And basically, that's what they say. And it wasn't. They had bones, they had teeth, they had everything else. And they say they were bizarre, yes. And they were beyond anything. And they could have been a failed evolutionary experiment, is what they said in their paper. And I agree with that. That's all possibly true. But it's true, these things are here, and they're not something to avoid and belittle. There's something to be investigated, and I am investigating, and I'm investigating all of the stuff. And like I said, the fellow Breet there, we're going to be looking through some of his stuff, and I got a lot of my own stuff too. But he has some little details about the things he presents, which is really, really fabulous. Because all I know this is in the Czech Republic. They sent us, what do you think this is? I said, whoa. I said, that's a green monster. I don't know what it is. And I couldn't find it. And then I started posting. I said, anybody have any idea? And somebody sent me the thing. I believe somebody sent me a thing about the flea. I don't think I found that myself. But, you know, all of this stuff is just, if you dig deep enough, sooner or later you find stuff. I was looking for everything that I could find, and I don't think I found that flea. I think somebody sent that to me and said, I think it's a flea. And I said, well, yep, I think you're right. Or damn close. So anyway, that's it for today. Thank you. I love you all. And actually, I don't know where I am in the video, to be perfectly honest with you. It might continue on forever. I do this all the time. I get lost in these things. I get so many interruptions that I can't remember where I started and end, and I guess that might have something to do with the way my brain is functioning in this age that I am approaching. All right, so I will talk to you later. Just for your information.